All right, so if you're just joining us, these are some very, very dramatic images that are being played out over the skies of Israel at this moment. These are the ballistic missile strikes that the Iranians have carried out in a very dramatic fashion. Now, remember what is unfolding at this point of time, and it's happening simultaneously. It is not that the Israelis have hit Iran and then Iran is hitting back. What we are looking at unfold at this moment is that the two nations are having a go at each other, lashing each other with their missile and drone strikes. And what is also important to highlight at this moment is that the war has now qualitatively changed. The Israelis started by targeting the oil and gas refining facilities within Iran, and immediately afterwards, within a span of about 3 to 4 hours, Iran has hit back at one of the biggest oil and gas refining facility in Haifa. So these are the images of some pretty dramatic drone and missile strikes that are being carried out. And at this moment, this is what Israel Katz, the Israeli defense minister, claims, that Tehran is burning because of the attacks that the Israelis have in fact carried out on Tehran in the span of the last couple of hours. And also, reports are coming in that the Israeli Air Force has targeted the Fatah Air Base of the IRGC Army's aviation in Karaj. This is the IRGC's largest helicopter base, which houses about 40 helicopters along with its helicopter training center and several other key maintenance facilities. Now, the port city, the southernmost port city of Eilat in the state of Israel, has also reportedly come under attack. There are reports of sirens that are being sounded over there. And apart from this, the Syrian airspace remains closed until Sunday. So does the Jordanian airspace. Remember, the Jordanians have in fact made good their relations. They've recognized the state of Israel, and they were one of the first people who, of course, normalized their relations with the state of Israel. And therefore, Jordan is a close ally of the United States. And with Jolani, after the toppling of the Bashar al-Assad government, taking over charge in Damascus, both Jordan and Syria are favorably disposed towards the Israelis, and therefore both these nations shutting down their airspace till Sunday morning effectively means only one thing: that we can expect more attacks from the Israeli side and from the Iranian side as well. These are some very, very dramatic images that played out a little while back over the skies in Haifa. Let's listen in to the impact of what it was like under the skies with these ballistic missiles flying over them. These are some very dramatic images of the Iranian drones or the Israeli skylines. And also joining us in the broadcast, we've got Dr. Paul Dorfman, who's a Bennett scholar at the Bennett University at the University of Sussex. He's also a member of the Irish Government Radiation Protection Advisory Committee and chaired the Nuclear Consulting Group. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Dorfman, for joining us on this broadcast. Now, let me start off by asking you this. Considering these dramatic attacks that we've witnessed in the course of the last 60 to 90 minutes, in your assessment, what's playing out here? Why is it that Iran and Israel are lashing out at each other in these very dramatic missile and drone strikes?
Israel's stated war aims were to cease the enrichment of uranium to make a bomb. the problem is that Natanz, which is the major uranium enrichment site to make a bomb, is 8 meters below reinforced concrete and hard rock. And Fordo is about 80 to 90 meters deep. Now, in order to reach these facilities, the only thing that can possibly reach these facilities is the US bunker-busting GBU-57B bomb. Now, this is 14 tons, 6 meters long, and can only be launched by US B-2 bomber. So there are two options here. Either the US gets involved, and in terms of the US's war aims, it is then able to actually attack the enrichment facilities, which is the key to what started this, let's say, war. Or there are softer targets.
What do you mean softer targets?
Well, the targets that you're being seen, you know, that you're seeing. But in terms of what's also happened, both in terms of Haifa, but also in terms of what's happened in Iran, are targeting oil. Now, in strict scientific technological terms, the Gulf is a almost entirely enclosed sea. It's shallow. It has a very low turnover. Now, Bushehr, so Israel says that it's going to go for potentially other Iranian targets, okay, nuclear targets. Now, Bushehr is the only substantial nuclear power plant in Iran, and there's Bandar-e-Abbas, which is a sort of also part of the enrichment process. Both of these facilities are by the sea on the Gulf. Now, the problem, the key problem is, and it's very, very important to consider, and Saudi needs to consider this, Qatar, Oman, all of the Gulf states who rely on the Gulf for desalination. If these plants are hit by whoever, the Gulf gets contaminated, severely contaminated by radionuclides, then the Gulf states have a severe drinking water problem because the desalination plants will be ineffective.
I think you're making a very logical point there, that if these nuclear facilities are hit, it can contaminate the drinking water sources of the entire Gulf region. But I'm pretty sure that the Israelis who started off with Operation Rising Lion, a name with clear biblical connotations there, which is also backed by the United States of America, is not thinking about the nitty-gritties of whether people will have a source of clear drinking water that is not contaminated with nuclear radiation. In terms of what we are witnessing, this is a hot war, and the Israelis since this evening have struck some of the oil and gas refining facilities within Iran, for which the Iranians have responded by hitting back at the oil and gas refining facilities that Israel has in Haifa. The question that I want to ask you is this: what do you think this will do to the price of oil, and what will that impact be on the global economy?
Okay, the price of oil clearly is absolutely key here, and also there's the question about what's going to happen in terms of how to get the oil out of the Gulf as well too, because Iran can presumably shut off. So it will affect the oil economy without any question, and we will see the price of oil. The price of oil already has been severely impacted by this. But it's not simply talking about the price of oil. I mean, money is money, but you can't drink or eat money. Now, in terms of the recent attack on the Gulf, the Iran oil refineries, that also contaminates the Gulf as well too. Now, you have to remember that the Gulf is it's a very shallow sea, you know, right. 30 meters deep. It doesn't turn over. So what happens in the Gulf stays in the Gulf. And all that implies for desalination plants that Saudi, Qatar, Oman, UAE, and Iran depend on. So Saudi better get its act together in terms of talking to the Americans in terms of these kinds of potential targets.
You know, you're making a very significant point, but do you think this is something that the Israelis are thinking about? Because when Netanyahu spoke earlier this evening, he was clearly indicating at a regime change that he wanted to bring about in Tehran with the help of the Americans. What that means is an all-out war between Israel and Iran.
Israel, without doubt, is a nuclear nation. Iran has enriched to, what, 60%? Now, 60% is still bomb-making material. Okay, if you want to talk about mutually assured destruction. Dimona is a well-known Israeli nuclear military site. It's well understood that it exists.
Right.
So basically, what we're seeing here is a ramping war that is escalating, and it's a very, very dangerous situation. People really need to think about where their priorities here and take a step back.
Interesting. Now, the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, Benjamin Netanyahu, who's been a very, very open critique of the Iranian government for the last 30 years. He's been out and about saying that Iran is very close to making a nuclear bomb. He's been saying that for the last 30 years, saying that Iran is just weeks away from making a nuclear weapon. But Iranians insist that they have no intention of making a nuclear weapon. The only thing that they are interested in is, having a civil nuclear program, although it is widely now acknowledged that the Iranians have managed to enrich uranium to a purity of 60%. With that being what the Iranians have, how close, in your assessment, do you think is Tehran to having, if not a proper nuclear weapon, at least a crude nuclear weapon with which it can use mutually assured destruction as a deterrence against the Israelis, who are a nuclear weapon?
Okay, one needs to learn from history here. Pre-Trump pulling out of the JPOA, which was the interstate agreement to verify Iran's enrichment, all signed, sealed, and delivered. And 2018, Trump pulled out of that. At that time, Iran had 149 kilograms of enriched uranium to 3.67%.
Right.
So 49 kilograms to 3.67%, which is the number that you need for a civil nuclear plant. Now, we know what's happened since then. So to a certain extent, one can argue that perhaps this whole problem is potentially created by Trump's actions back in 2018. Now, we are where we are in terms of a viable nuclear weapon. There are all kinds of, variations that one consider, whether that's dirty bombs or other forms of destruction.
Right.
However, a kosher nuclear bomb needs about 80 to 90% enrichment, and it needs a delivery vessel. It needs to be well delivered. So we're not quite there yet, but we seem to be getting there, and it's not looking pretty.